Sure. Certainly, the things I've been hearing are on vast ends of the spectrum. There's not a whole lot of middle ground talk. So certainly a lot of my peers who are either running or heavily involved in the Democratic Party are much more vocalized about having common sense gun laws and looking at the system and that we have and improving that. And then certainly, I'm from a small rural town in South Carolina where hunting and having a gun was sort of a way of life. So a lot of, my family and friends from my childhood certainly still are, and in East Tennessee for sure, certainly still have that kind of as a way of life and a culture that they're fearful that could change, and are very adamant about protecting their access to have guns. But I think at this period of time, we have to recognize that access matters. Access to guns make a difference. It affects your heightened potential for being a victim of a gunshot, and it also affects individuals who are close to you. And so I think we have to look at that research and acknowledge that it's truth and recognize that there has to be a way to make the system better. And, I certainly don't want to stand up and say everyone's guns need to go away. I recognize that there are people who, for a myriad of reasons, might still feel the need to have a gun, whether it's they do hunt because that's, a sort of a traditional thing that they participate in, and a way that they do it in a respectful way where they utilize the meat that they gain from that experience and all of those things, or they need it for protection or whatever the case might be. But we have to have universal background checks. We have to make sure that individuals who have access to guns are vetted and don't have a history of domestic violence or violent crime. And there really is no need for individuals in our communities to have AR-15 or assault-style rifles or weapons. If you're using them for protection, your best bet is a handgun under your pillow or wherever you store it in a safe, locked place, please. But if you're using it for hunting, you don't need an assault rifle because it's going to annihilate the thing that you're hunting. And so I really don't know that there is a rational argument for having assault-style weapons in the hands of civilians. Sure, in the active war in engaged combat, that is a whole different story. But when we're talking about individuals having weapons in their home and having access to guns, they have to have a vetted process to have the ability to purchase those guns. And then they have to be the right weapons that make sense for civilians to own. And I think that's all intuitive and rational. And certainly there's going to be heated arguments on both sides. But the issue and the well-being, especially of our children, and, I think about the children who have lost their lives to gun violence in schools, which is a place that should be the safest outside the home for them to be. I just cannot imagine us as a society not recognizing the weight of that and saying, whatever disagreements we might have, ultimately making sure this process works for all of us is more important. And we have to find that common ground to make sure we have common sense gun laws and provide the process for individuals who are safe to own guns to have them, and those who are screened out because of their background of violence or domestic violence or whatever the case is, don't have access to those weapons.
Is there anything else that you would like to make sure we talk about?
In reflecting on why I wanted to run and what is sort of the catalyst for me doing this, I think often of my grandmother, who was an orphan and was adopted as a young girl by a couple of missionaries who then gave her the life that she hoped to have. And as an adult, then she felt compelled to adopt other children and have taken foster children and care for them and kind of pay it forward. And in that process, she was so dedicated to that that she kind of became known in the small rural Wisconsin community where she lived, of where she and my grandfather lived, of being the home that would take any child. Most of the children that other families would not take, because it was the 50s and the 60s and war was happening. So if it was a child of a race that was not accepted in that community, or a child of a different background, a lot of families wouldn't accept them. But my grandmother and grandfather welcomed all children with open arms into their home. And there was one moment where my grandmother took in a baby who was of another race and was very sick. And she went to the hospital to try to get this infant care. And no one would help her because she was a white woman with a brown baby. And she pleaded with them. And ultimately that baby died. And I think about that message, that so often there are people in our community who are immediately cast aside because they're from the wrong zip code, or they have the wrong skin color, or they have the wrong parents. And it is time for that to change, because first and foremost, we are all humans, and we are all deserving of the same respect and dignity. And it is time that we have representatives in our state, in our country, that have that mentality. And I think about how gut-wrenching that experience was for my grandmother and that baby, and all of the individuals across our country who've had similar experiences. And it's time for that to change. And whether, I'm certainly hopeful that I can be part of that change. And I think even just running a campaign is part of that change. But it's time that we all step up and do our part. And hopefully the collective impact that all of us have in running our campaigns across the state and across the U.S. can chip away at that mentality that some of us deserve more than others, because that's not the case. We are all equal and all deserving of the same respect and humanity.
If people would like to help your campaign out, how can they do that?
Yeah, if people are interested in getting involved or supporting the campaign, you can visit our website, which is votetrudell.com, VOTETRUDELL.com. And there's a form you can fill out if you want to volunteer. There's a button you can click if you're willing to contribute to the campaign. Certainly every penny counts. Even $2, $3, $5 contributions are a big impact for our campaign, because we're all people run. So we function on donations from people, not corporations, and not super PACs or special interests. So every little bit counts for a campaign like ours. And you can follow us on social media. We have a Facebook and Twitter page too, which keeps people updated on what our campaign is doing and other ways to get involved over the next few months, because we'll certainly need all the help we can get.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for talking with us. This is really great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You want to save democracy, but you just can't seem to get off your couch. Well, you're in luck. Thanks to the magic of technology, you can now canvass for Democratic candidates from the comfort of your own living room. An organization called Red to Blue has a virtual canvassing program. It allows you to text registered voters and let them know about blue candidates, upcoming events, and of course, encourage them to vote in November. Red to Blue is targeting key districts the Democrats want to flip or hold on to. All you need is a computer and a couch, or a chair, or you could even stand if you want. They're not picky. Red to Blue will train you, they'll give you a script, and show you how to use their online dashboard. And they'll give you the voters to contact. The best part, this texting approach really works. It's not invasive, and it's more comfortable for people to engage with. It's especially effective with millennials, and we're not going to mention some gross stereotype about why that is. So, whether you're an introvert or an overachiever with too much on her plate, or just lazy, we're not judging. Virtual canvassing could be the activism you're looking for. To get started, just go to redtoblue.org to sign up. That's RED2BLUE.org. On this segment, we have with us Jennifer Vannoy, who is running for the Tennessee House in District 34. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Can you start by just telling us a little bit about your background and why you decided to run for State House?
Sure, absolutely. I was actually not involved in politics at all for most of my adult life, and I was a single mom. I graduated from MTSU here in Murfreesboro with 2 small preschool kids and took a job as a preschool teacher at their school so that they could get a great education and I could get free childcare. It didn't pay well. I didn't have insurance. And as they graduated from that preschool program, I realized that the public school system wasn't going to work for them very well. So I decided to homeschool them and needed a position in my life that would allow me to do that. So I started working nights as a restaurant manager and homeschooling them and stayed in the restaurant and hospitality industry for about 15 years. And still, I had 2 more kids come later and public schools were the right choice for them. It just kind of all flipped around so that restaurants were not working so well in my world. And then my dad in early 2016 had congestive heart failure. And it really was for my family's benefit for me to not work anymore, to be able to take care of him, to be at home with my family. And I was lucky enough to be in a position to do that. That was actually during the election cycle of 2016. So I got an earful and an eyeful of what was going on in that election cycle. And it just broke my heart. By every stretch of the imagination, broke my heart. So through that year, my dad got better. And we were really lucky for that. But I also realized that I had been complicit and complacent in my civic duties. And, I got up after the election, I looked in the mirror and I said, Jennifer, this is your fault. What are you going to do about it? And from that point forward, first I organized the Women's March in Nashville, and it was beautiful. We had a great event. 30,000 people plus maybe showed up. And once it was over, we all patted ourselves on the back and said, yay, we did something. And I looked in the mirror again and said, you know what, we really we did. We made a lot of noise, but there's more to be done. And still having that responsibility on my shoulders, I moved into the state legislature at that point and really got an eyeful of what was happening in Nashville for the benefit of the state or lack thereof. And, in Tennessee, we're in a really large super minority, and there's things, that needed to happen for the benefit of the citizens, especially in Rutherford County, with the growth that we have. And I kind of built myself as a bridge between our state legislature and the following that I had built up on social media because of the Women's March, and really got a lot of people involved in what was happening in our state legislature. And then I started looking around and I was going, something's got to change. We have to be able to have open conversations. We have to be able to be concerned with what the citizens want and what our constituents want and what's in the best interest of the families of the people in Rutherford County. And that wasn't being addressed from everything that I could tell. So again, once that season was over, I looked in the mirror and I just was like, okay, what's next? Because now we've done a lot of great activism and advocacy for the state, but something else has to happen. And at that point, I realized something else really had to happen at the state legislature, that we can create as much change as we want to from the outside, but it doesn't really matter if it's falling on deaf ears from the inside. So we needed to get people into the state legislature that had an open mind and open ears and were in touch with their community. And at that point, I said, that person's you. Let's do this.
Could you tell us a little bit about District 34? Like, where is it in Tennessee? Sort of, what's it like? What is the population like there?
So District 34 is the southwest quadrant of Rutherford County, and it is an absolutely beautiful and very diverse area. So we've got about a fourth of Murfreesboro city proper, which is the dead center of Tennessee. And we have the suburbs. We have a large area of rural communities that have been typically farmland for, forever. So years ago, Murfreesboro was a small college town surrounded by farmland. And at this point in time, we are growing to the point that I think we're within the top 10 growing communities, growing areas in the United States. Rapid growth.
So right now, you mentioned that the Democrats are in a super minority.